Hi, this is Alexcursus. Sometimes I would pick up multiple gunplas and compare them. This time we are comparing the RX-78-2 with the RGM-79. Now I had a few RX-78 built after we had looked at the RGM-79, but none of them are very close in style with the GM. So I put this off until we get to this guy that we've seen recently. I also had talked about how much production cost the Federation had saved with the GM instead of building more Gundams. Supposedly by the end of the war, they can produce 20 GM instead of one Gundam. So now with the RX-78-2 and RGM-79 GM in the same style, we can do some one-to-one comparison. If you couldn't tell before, these two are Mo brothers. They have some very similar parts. It is easy to see how much the Federation saved up by just looking at the upper torso. The head, for example, not going with all these frills, not going with a V antenna, and not a complex face mask. The twin camera, twin eyes, supposedly is the same for some GM, while some of them would have a mono eye like a Zaku, and in this version for the HGUC, they decided to depict it as a single large module. So it's very easy to see how Federation can save up there. Down to the color, pretty much the same shape. Gundam just have it yellow on the side while GM keep it red. Continue down to the chest, same yellow exhaust and counter thruster with a cockpit in the middle. But you can see the cockpit hatch of the GM is just one single slab instead of the multi-step of the Gundam. Abdomen is practically the same though. And then we have the shoulder armors. Exactly the same shape. Nothing is changed there. The arms, practically the same. Skirt, we can see massive saving here again. GM just have a single slab while Gundam have multiple segments. Side skirt too, GM just have simple slab while Gundam supposedly have a connection or storage in the side skirt. Down to the thigh, practically the same, but then the lower leg is very different. The shin, you can see Gundam have this knee pad with counter thrusters, where GM just have a big slab and this tiny dot presumably is a apogee motor, although it could just be a hatch opener. Ankle armor is the same. Foot is basically the same. Back of the legs, pretty much the same. Now we can see some difference for the Gunpla. RX-78-2 here definitely get its own ankle, while GM just have solid blocks that is part of the lower leg. This is the first big indicator of how Bandai also managed to save money with the GM. Backpack, practically the same. Again, this is a G-Armor version, that's why it has slightly different or sockets at the back. But otherwise, same style, just Gundam having two beam saber holsters and beam sabers, while GM just have one. The beam saber looks the same though, unless you pull it out and you will find this beam saber have no socket for a beam saber blade. The shield is practically the same, except GM got its unpainted lunar ceramic color on the side. Supposedly, GM shield is cheaper to produce as well, despite being the same style. Federation probably figure something out to make a shield that is, as good as it would do compared to the Gundam one in defense, but probably less durable. Although Gundam shield isn't very durable because Gundams tend to get into some rather intensive fights. So Federation probably made a good call there. Another big money save is the weapon. The beam spray gun definitely looks way tinier and simpler than the beam rifle on the Gundam. And the beam rifle supposedly could be used as a designated marksman, if not a sniper rifle on Earth, despite the air profile a lot more resistant to the beam shots compared to them in space. Either way, because Federation created Gundam and the Gundam model a la GM for close quarter fights, so it makes sense to give them a tiny small short range beam weapon. As for Bandai, Gundam on the top have a shoulder hinge or shoulder blade hinge, while GM just have a single pick for the arms to pick into the shoulder armor. So yeah, between the lack of shoulder joint, lack of ankle joint, and then a simplified beam saber, along with one less beam saber and a smaller gun, Bandai managed to cut the price of GM 30%. Not quite the Federation's 1 to 20, but given Bandai expected to make a lot of RX-78-2, them having a 30% less in retail price is pretty good for authenticity. And in the GM comparison video, I also talk about how the Type C restore some additional functionality, supposedly, from the Gundam. That's why we are bringing it in. Now, obviously, the GM Type C is based on Katoki's redesign of the RX-78-2, but there are quite a bit of similarities that we can see here. First of all is the return of the more complex cockpit hatch. Now, supposedly this cockpit hatch exists to facilitate for the core fighter, while GM Type C does not have a core fighter. Presumably by doing this, Federation can fit more advanced cockpits or provide better protection to the pilots. Next is the skirts, back into proper segments. Still missing the yellow blocks though, and the side skirts have a attachment point instead of the simple slab on the regular GM. The shins have no changes. So yeah, pretty easy to see how Federation and Bandai simplified the Gundam into the GM and how they port some of those back to the GM Type C. Like I have said, this Gundam, the original HGUC RX-78-2, is very much obsolete, but after seeing how similar it is to the GM, I am more fond of it. Not that it's no longer obsolete, but it is a nice addition in the collection for me. And I should also go and finish up the G-Fighter so that we can talk about the rest of this kit. Thanks for watching. See you next time.